Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for being with us today in another class. My name is Veronica Alvarez, and I'm with Partner Research Network. And before we start our class, we're going to remind you who is Partner Research Network and what we do. And you already know about us. Thank you for being again with us today. So Partner Research Network is the parent training and information centers for Texas. And we are funded by the Department of Education, the Office of Special Education, and we provide free resources and training for parents of children with disabilities and young adults with disabilities that we call them self-advocates. Our mission is to empower and support Texas families and individuals impacted with disabilities or special healthcare needs. We serve parents of children with disabilities and youth with disabilities from the ages of 0 to 26, as well as young adults with disabilities of self-advocates ages 14 to 26. We have 4 projects serving parents here in Texas, and I'm part of the team project. As you can see, is the red area in the map. So I'm in region 13, so I'm in Austin. And we have another regions also serving on the team project. We have region 20, that is San Antonio, Texas, and region 1, that is the Rio Grande Valley area, that's region 1. But if you are in another part of the state, we have a regional coordinator near you helping parents and young adults with disabilities. Our services are free, and we offer parent workshops, youth workshops, webinars, information and referrals, one-on-one technical assistance, supports in the R meetings, and we do these IEP clinics helping you guys understand the document. We also do once a year a symposium. Mine, Region 13 symposium is coming very soon. We invite you guys to join us on April 21st, starting at 9 o'clock, and Allison is going to start talking on that day. And we have 4 speakers talking to us on that day. If you need information about it, just type it in the chat so that I can send you the invitation. We do also parent leadership training, youth leadership trainings, and we can help you access to social media resources. So for today, if you have questions, please type it in the chat box or in the Q&A, because your microphone and your video camera is off. We are recording this presentation. Allison, Schaberg with Consolidated Planning Group, they have a YouTube channel and they post all the webinars that we do with them in collaboration with them. And we also upload our videos in our Facebook pages. At the end of this presentation, you are going to receive an evaluation. It's a link for an evaluation. It's a survey. Please help us with your honest feedback. And with that, we can also report to our grant and continue giving you guys free services. We do not provide CEUs, but if you need a certificate of attendance, I can make one for you. Please type it in the chat box if you need one. Again, my name is Veronica Alvarez, and as you can see, there is my phone number, my email. I also put that information in the chat box. And please visit our webpage, www.prntexas.org. So that's the end of my information for you guys. And now we are going to start with our class today. We have with us again, Allison Schaberg from Consolidated Planning Group. And she's a financial advisor for the special needs community with a lot of experience, more than 25 years experience working with families. Thank you, Allison. And we also have Melissa Donovan. She's an attorney for the Texas Trust Law, and she's here in Austin, and she's awesome. She just helped me with Guardianship. We see each other on Friday, and my son is 18, and she helped us. She has a lot of knowledge. But today they are going to be talking about trust. The class today is special need planning, special needs trust. So thank you guys for being with us today.
Thank you. Thank you for having us. It's always a pleasure to be back with you, Veronica. And, I agree. I hear really great feedback about Melissa Donovan all the time from our clients. So it's a pleasure to be partnering with you again, Melissa, today. So Consolidated Planning Group, as Veronica said, we're a holistic special needs planning firm. If you've joined these webinars in the past, we're glad you're back. If this is your first time, we do have a YouTube channel we've put in the chat box. We have a series of webinars all related to special needs and special needs planning and things you might need to be thinking about on your journey. A lot of the things, as Melissa's talking today, anytime we start talking about special needs, a number of other topics come up relating. And I always say that each one of those topics could have a whole webinar themselves, which they do. So you can find those out there on our YouTube channel. So Melissa, because I know that, special needs trust, that's a buzzword. That's something we hear all the time in this community. That's all we ever hear about, how we need to have a special needs trust and how we need to understand the differences between a first party and a third party. So buckle up, everyone. We're glad you're here. Melissa is going to kind of give us all the information that we need. And again, please do put your questions in the chat box. We're going to answer just as many of them as we can. And having said that, Melissa, I'd just like to turn everything over to you.
Why, thank you, Allison. I have to say, I feel like every time I come back and we do these, you just make me blush more and more and more. So thank you.
It's because you're awesome.
As are y'all. So we are going to talk about some special needs trust today. And I usually, whenever I start teaching about special needs trust, I kind of like to warn people, because I don't know about anyone else, but high school science was not my favorite class, but every time I think about special needs trust, I go back to thinking about when you would track genes in the little box and you've got, your x-axis and your y-axis, and we're going to figure out how all these things fit together within those 4 little boxes. And that's kind of how I like to give a little bit of a summation of how we're going to talk about special needs trust. But thankfully for everyone, there will not be a test at the end of it. So the issue with special needs trust. So we get this question a lot. And with special needs trust, we always kind of have to preface anything that we're talking about, whether it's trust planning, guardianships, anything having to do with estate planning, it is going to be state specific. So, if you have family members who don't live in Texas, or if you have a child who ends up moving out of Texas for some reason, and you do trust here in Texas based on our rules, you always want to make sure that you're working with an attorney in the state where the actual beneficiary is going to reside, because those things can vary state to state. But the main thing is why? Why do we even talk about special needs trusts, and what's the whole point of them? So usually, I talk to a lot of different types of people about these things, and sometimes I'm teaching CPAs who don't have special needs children, or other professionals, and they may not fully comprehend what's the purpose, why are we doing this, what are all of the costs involved. And I know in this group, y'all are kind of intimately familiar with the various costs that are involved in raising a child with special needs, regardless of what that actual condition may be. I mean, we're talking about people maybe that can never work, so there's no wages there, or we're talking about special therapies, additional things. And as maybe some of you are well aware of, even if we have benefits coming in, they don't necessarily cover everything. So the purpose of having, appropriate planning in place is to maintain the goals that really probably most families would agree upon, in addition to maintaining those benefits. So the first issue is maintaining your child or loved one's quality of life, the basic things that we all kind of talk about in even general estate planning. So, what are the educational things that we want to take care of for our kids? What kind of care standards are we concerned about? Bringing family support into the equation. And then the things that I like to call kind of the everyday luxuries, things that, you or I may not think too much about, but, the cable bill, or, I don't know how many people are going to the movies these days. I think it's coming back, but going to the movies, little things like that, that you just want to make sure are there as an opportunity for the beneficiary of this trust. But the reason why we need to structure that appropriately is that kind of second side there, which is maintaining benefits. You know, the general way that most people choose to do their estate planning, if you've got minor children, you might have a will in place that says, you know, okay, if you're under 25 years old or whatnot, we're going to make sure there's a trust for maybe your aunt or uncle to manage, because we're not going to give money to a 19-year-old maybe, or you shouldn't. If you have in your will that you do have money going to an 18-year-old outright, just consider changing that. Little advice. But when you are in a situation where someone does have a disability and you are looking at long-term need for government benefits like Medicaid or Social Security, and we give money to that child either outright completely because the will says outright, or you've named your child as a beneficiary on a life insurance policy, without any kind of trust in place, or even if we give them a trust structured in a way where it says when you're 25, you can do what you want with it. Those things could very significantly reduce or eliminate the benefits that your child or loved one is receiving and needs to continue receiving. So things like SSI that bring in income for someone, and the Medicaid benefits that are paying for the medical services that they need. In most of those cases, there's very restrictive asset and income limitations. And maybe these numbers are things that you've heard thrown around quite a bit over time. So, you know, most programs, you're looking at a $2,000 asset limit. If you go over it, even by a penny, you're looking at a loss in benefits. If you have too much income, then it can completely disqualify the SSI. And then if you completely disqualify the SSI, depending upon what Medicaid program you're in, are you going to lose the Medicaid benefits as well? So they all kind of come together. And if you don't properly structure the way that your loved one is going to receive anything from you, then you're looking at that loss in benefits. And that's really the ultimate goal of doing special needs planning. And when we talk about special needs trust, that trust is specifically structured in a way that, based on Social Security rules, based on the Medicaid regulations, that's not going to cause a disqualification in benefits in and of itself. It's a way that you can give property to your kids, and that way they're not going to disqualify benefits. So this slide here, oh, go ahead, Allison.
Let's just talk about that for a second. I know that you and I've talked about this a lot. Because she said a lot just then, is, you know, a way to leave money to our special needs family member without them disqualifying for benefits. And a lot of families, if you've attended our webinars in the past, you know that we talk about this on a pretty regular basis, but a lot of families accidentally have things set up incorrectly that will definitely make their kids not qualify or disqualify for the benefits that they're currently receiving. And one way that families do this is by having their beneficiaries set up incorrectly. So when I'm speaking of beneficiaries, I'm talking about life insurance, investments, 401ks, things like that. And most families have it set up in such a way that if you're married, if something happens to me, it goes to my spouse. And if something happens to me, my spouse is already dead and gone, then that's easy. My children are going to split it equally. That's what a lot of families do. And if you've done that, you're not alone. So don't beat yourself up. Like 99% of people do this. But if you've got your special needs loved one named that way, that is definitely going to make them disqualify. So this is a perfect example and a perfect timeline of talking about this is why you need the special needs trust. So instead of that beneficiary in the life insurance saying, you know, to little Johnny, his name outright, it's going to say to the special needs trust or the supplemental needs trust for the benefit of little Johnny. That's completely different than leaving it directly to him. So it's really, really an important topic and a big, big why behind the special needs trust. Absolutely.
Now, some things I do sometimes like to touch on in case people would like to know the information. I don't want to jump too deep into it because we could, again, like Allison was saying, we could have a whole 2-hour conversation if we get too deep into all of the details. And I know you probably don't want all of that, but there is some basic information here about the different ways that the Social Security program treats income. because as a general rule, we usually will use a bright number and we'll say, well, $844 of income. It can vary depending on the type of income. So sometimes this becomes more of an issue when somebody has worked and then they become disabled due to an accident or a condition that's diagnosed later in life. So this is just some basic information. I believe that the slides are available. They'd be available on the YouTube. So if you wanted to come back and look at it, you could always look at it later on if you had any particular interest in that. But to be able to kind of just talk about a few basic things, the Medicaid program, the Social Security program, there are certain things that they do count as income. There are certain things they do not. The biggest thing that I think people need to be aware of, which is a general kind of axiom that I maintain across a lot of things, but income is one of those things where we have a very standardized definition that we colloquially think of as income. Income is if I have a job, what I'm paid for my job, or it's the interest and dividends that I earn from my investments or things like that. In the eyes of Medicaid and Social Security, income will also include things, particularly cash, that other people give to us. So sometimes we refer to Medicaid as being the antimatter universe. And I know that sounds harsh, but there are so many things that when it comes to the Medicaid program and when it comes to Social Security, the way that they view and kind of categorize things is completely alternative to the way that we would think of those things from a tax perspective or just a general colloquial sense. So always keep in mind that when we're using this term income, it doesn't necessarily mean what we initially believe it to be. So gifts, things that we would refer to as gifts in general life, can be considered income, and then that income can disqualify your beneficiary. So that's where we want to kind of keep in mind why we do these trusts and how they work. Now, there's of course different ways that one can qualify for Medicaid programs. Like I said earlier, there's Medicaid that's directly connected to your SSI benefit. There's income-based eligibility, even if someone is not necessarily on SSI, then you've got your waiver programs. And again, if you have loved ones in another state, you always want to check with each individual state, because Medicaid is one of those things where, yes, it is a federal program, but it's administered through the states. So different waiver programs can be different state to state. And of course, the rules and how they treat income. As a general nature, they're kind of very similar, but there's always little intricacies state to state. So before we dive really deeply into all of these different types of special needs trusts and why you would do each one of them individually, there are just some basic things that I always like to review and kind of that timeline. When you have a child who does have a disability, over the course of the people in this webinar, there could be a complete range of how old your children are, or maybe you're here because of a sibling or another loved one. But when looking at children, it's kind of a timeline of events as they get older, from early childhood to turning 18, and what things you need to think about. Are there actual Medicaid benefits available while they're a child? Maybe, maybe not. It all depends on the circumstances. And really, if there's not that opportunity for childhood benefits, you're probably going to be focusing your energy on, okay, what can I do? What do I need to be prepared for when my child turns 18? Because in the eyes of the law, still, when you turn 18, you're an adult. And that's when things really will change as it pertains to how parents and children are connecting on an income and asset structure.
Melissa, it's pretty common. We see a lot of families that, historically they've never qualified. They've applied for benefits in the past and they were denied because they basically were over the asset limit. And so their child was denied, but they just really didn't even know that everything changes when a child turns 18. So for everybody out here who has applied in the past and got denied because you make too much money, you have too much assets, just know that they're not looking any longer at your assets. Once your child turns 18, you should have it on the radar to apply for SSI and Medicaid. It is important that you have money in the right buckets first. we can work with you on that and kind of get you ready for that application. But it is the time to apply again. And this time they're probably not going to get denied. It'll take a long time to get approved, but they're probably not going to get denied. So it's just important to know that, because a lot of people just, once they were told no, they never ever went back to the wall again to ask again. They didn't know they should.
Yeah, but if there's kind of one thing that you always want to keep in mind, whenever it comes to Social Security or Medicaid, don't take your first no as an answer and just quit then and there. Always go back. Now, really at that point, when you're looking towards those benefits at 18, other things that you want to think about, is a guardianship going to be necessary or not? Again, we're not going to spend too much time talking about guardianship. We've got whole other webinars, like Allison said on her YouTube page there, that you can go to and see those. But then the big thing becomes your planning. And what do we do? Like we were talking about, how do we do those beneficiary designations? How do we decide what we're going to do for each of our children if we do pass away? And that's where we get into this discussion on special needs trust. Now, we will talk a little bit about ABLE accounts as well. I know that's something Allison and I always enjoy kind of mulling over with y'all. So special needs trust. So like I said earlier, I usually, if you're a visual person, think about this like those 4 boxes from, science class when we're looking at genes and things like that. So there's 4 main things that will come together, 2 categories to decide what kind of trust we're doing. So the first big thing is, are we looking at a first party trust or a third party trust? So a first party trust is going to be a trust that is created and funded with the beneficiary's own money. So these are trusts that are done when we're looking at maybe a medical malpractice suit is a very common situation. If there's a settlement coming in, or if there was an accident and there's a lawsuit and a settlement coming in from there, that settlement money, if that individual that was injured is not going to be able to maintain a relatively typical life and they're going to need benefits, that money is going to disqualify them unless it goes into a trust. And in that scenario, we're looking at a first party trust. Now,
some other examples I've seen are scholarship refunds. Some of our kids with disabilities do go to college. They get some scholarships, there's scholarship refunds. That would be first party money as well, right?
Yes, it would be. It all depends, of course, on the circumstances and how much. Of course, that's where we usually get into conversations about ABLE accounts as well. And we'll talk about that a little bit more. There are some things that Medicaid's not going to consider income in terms of benefits that may come back to an individual that you wouldn't need to do this for. So as we get into real detail stuff there, like we were saying, so long as the money is spent in a specified time frame, they may not look at it so much. So it all depends on exactly what's coming back in. The other thing,
I just want to I want to ask another question about first party. So in the example, we were talking about beneficiaries earlier, and in the example that somebody, let's say a grandparent or a family member passes away and they leave our loved one their life insurance and they don't know that it should be in a special needs trust, would that be considered first party money, or what would happen in that regard if somebody accidentally leaves my kid too much money? What do I do?
Yeah, so that's also another scenario where you're looking at a first party trust. If it's a beneficiary designation, if it's a retirement account, life insurance policy, a transfer on death designation on a bank account, as soon as that person that had the life insurance or the bank account initially, as soon as that person passes away, that money automatically by law belongs to whoever is designated on that beneficiary form. So even though we would think about that money as being, well, that was grandma's money, or that was Auntie Melissa's money, it's not. The moment that that person passes away, it's the beneficiary's money. So in that example that Allison just gave, where someone passes away, designates your child as a beneficiary without any references to trust, it's theirs outright, that would be first party money. And depending upon the dollar amount, you may have to go through and create this first party trust. Now, if it's a small amount, like if it's $5,000 or something like that, then probably better suited, and usually would be better suited going into an ABLE account that we'll kind of touch on a little bit later. But if it's a large sum of money, then you're going to have to create a first party trust. And that allows for the beneficiary's money to go into this trust. And, depending upon the age and the mental status of the beneficiary, it can be created by a parent, grandparent, guardian, or even the beneficiary, him or herself, depending upon, again, age, and if they have the capacity to sign legal documents. But the key thing with that first party trust, and why we really try to avoid it when it comes to good estate planning for grandma or Auntie Melissa in that example, is a first party trust has a Medicaid payback. So if you're not familiar with this, so the Medicaid program reserves the right to be paid back for what they've paid on behalf of someone in specific scenarios. If you create a first party trust, basically what's happening is that the Medicaid office is saying, we're going to allow you to create this trust so that you can maintain benefits. But if you do that, any money left in this trust when the beneficiary passes away goes to pay us back first. And by us, I don't mean us, I mean the state of Texas. That's a pretty big downside when it's grandma's money to begin with, because to kind of transition over to the other side there, if grandma had done her planning properly and either in her will or trust had created a special needs trust for the beneficiary, designated the special needs trust as the beneficiary of the life insurance policy, now we have a third party trust. And grandma's money that goes into that third party trust can still benefit the child for the rest of their life. There's no restrictions in terms of how much money can be in there. And most importantly, nothing gets paid back to the state of Texas, because that money, when it transitions from grandma directly to a trust for the benefit of the individual, it was never the individual's money to begin with. So the state of Texas has no interest in what might be left in that trust when the individual passes away down the line. So it kind of goes back to what you were saying earlier, Allison, and what we kind of, maybe people would say harp on a little bit, but a little bit of good planning can avoid a lot of headache down the road. And that's kind of that main difference. So first party, if Johnny is receiving Medicaid and Social Security, Johnny's money is going into that trust, and we're going to be subject to a Medicaid payback provision. Third party, it's mom, dad, grandma, auntie, uncle, whoever it may be, creating this trust with their money for the money to be there for the beneficiary. No Medicaid payback provision when the beneficiary ultimately passes away down the road. So that's a big difference in how that money can be benefited. And really what that means is, if let's say grandma creates $100,000 or $300,000 trust for little Johnny, and Johnny doesn't need all of that money, then when Johnny passes away, grandma's going to be able to give it to maybe Johnny's siblings or whatever other family member grandma wanted that money to go to. Doesn't go to the state of Texas. Now, the other kind of axis in our box example is this issue of, is it a testamentary trust, or what we usually will refer to as a standalone or a living trust? So testamentary is just a fancy word for saying it's created upon someone's passing, someone's death. So this would be a trust that's created under your will. Or if you have a living trust and you're creating a trust for your child under your living trust, that's only going to be created and funded after you pass away, that's a testamentary trust. A living or standalone trust is a trust that's created now. So if I'm signing a special needs trust today for Johnny, I'm signing that trust, we are funding that trust, and that trust is already in existence. Now, why one might do that versus a testamentary is going to vary based on family situations. Typically, the first thing that I tell clients that we want to think about in determining, do we need a current trust or are we okay doing a testamentary trust, is how many people want to help out Johnny. If we are in a small family scenario where we don't think that there's anyone else that's going to want to leave money to Johnny, and really I'm just wanting to give money to it when I pass away, I don't have extra money that I want to put into it right now, then we can do a testamentary trust. We can do my will, we can do my trust, and we can say when I pass away, whatever money I'm going to leave to Johnny is going to go into this special needs trust that's only created at my death, hence testamentary. But if we are in a scenario where, maybe it's that we know grandma and grandpa want to leave money to Johnny and not to me as the parent first, they want to give it directly to him, or we've got other friends and family members that want to contribute now, then having a separate trust in place at that point in time is going to be a better situation, because what it does is it allows for there to be one bucket for everyone to put their money into for the benefit of Johnny. And down the line, what that avoids is Johnny having 7 different trusts from 7 different people. He'll have one trust, there can be one management system, and it makes everything a lot easier. So those are always conversations that you're going to have with your attorney when you're looking at this planning, because it really is important to hone in on exactly what your family specifics are in determining what the best course of action is. So if you're thinking about, again, these boxes, so we've got our testamentary and standalone trust over here, and we've got our first party and our third party up here. And then we go from there in the conversation about, okay, where are we going to land? If we're not looking at the beneficiary's money, we're not in a scenario like Allison was saying, where somebody's already passed away, leaving money to the child, or we're not in a lawsuit situation where we have a settlement coming in, or the other situation where, kind of going back to one of the examples I gave earlier, not everybody is disabled due to a condition at birth. If there was a scenario where there's an accident or a later in life diagnosis that then causes them to become disabled, but they are under the age of 65, now maybe they need to create that trust to qualify for benefits. So it's that adult creating that own first party trust. First party trusts are always going to be current trusts. You're not going to create a trust with your own money for yourself after you pass away. Just can't do that. So first party trusts are always going to be in existence now. Third party, you're going to be looking at that testamentary or standalone trust. And again, based on the specifics of your family situation. And of course, there are other tax reasons, creditor protection reasons that maybe a family that has a significant amount of money that they want to put aside for a child will choose to do that standalone trust, even if there's no other family members they know will want to provide for it. It's just a very individualized conversation, again, that you're going to want to have with your attorney when you're looking at these things. Now, the big question usually is, okay, we've got all of this talk about creating a trust, but how does it actually get used? That's always the big question. Well, we've done this trust, we've talked about this planning, and okay, well, what can actually go to my child? So this is where we kind of go back to that phrase that I said I like to use, which is like those everyday luxuries. So there's things that it cannot pay for, and there's things that it technically cannot pay for, can cause some loss in benefits, but probably in the best interest of the beneficiary. The main purpose, again, a special needs trust is there to improve the quality of life for the beneficiary. It is not meant to replace Medicaid or SSI for them. That's why it's a supplemental trust. It's meant to supplement what those government benefits are already providing for your child. So it cannot pay for any medical services that Medicaid is already expected to cover, because then that's going to negate the Medicaid benefits. Basically, they're going to say, well, if you can pay for those benefits yourself, why are we? So you never want to have the trustee paying for anything that Medicaid is covering for your child. The big discussion is usually around this issue of food and shelter. So under Social Security rules, if someone else pays for a recipient's food or shelter, it will cause a loss in benefits. Now, this is what you may have heard this term before is referred to as in-kind support and maintenance. It's not a dollar for dollar negation. So if, let's say, I have a, sizable trust for a beneficiary, maybe it's, $500,000, million, however much is in there, even if it's 100,000, whatever it may be. If there's enough money in that trust that maybe I want to look at being able to provide for my child to live in a nicer place or to provide rent, if that trust pays for my child's rent, then that's going to be in-kind support and maintenance, and it's going to cause a 1/3 loss in benefits. So if these are current numbers, of course, these numbers change right now, about an $840 a month max benefit with SSI. you would be looking at a loss of about $282 a month in benefit from SSI for the trust or anyone else to be paying for housing or food for that beneficiary. There are mechanisms that can be used around it. And again, I know I keep kind of teasing ABLE accounts, but they're a really good tool. There's differences in what an ABLE account can provide for that's not going to cause any kind of disqualification, and what a special needs trust can provide for that will not cause a disqualification. And this issue of housing is usually the biggest one that we like to utilize ABLE accounts in. And it looks like Allison has another question. Oh, you're muted, Allison.
With the ABLE accounts and the special needs trust, one of the questions that we get on a pretty regular basis is, why do I need an ABLE account and a special needs trust? And this slide really hits on it. But what I wanted to say is there is a misconception out there, and your slide is so spot on it cannot pay for food and shelter without a partial loss on SSI, because sometimes you might hear in certain circles that a special needs trust simply can't pay for food and shelter. And the truth is it definitely can. It just is going to, have an effect on the SSI, and it will reduce the SSI. Some people don't care about that. If you do care about that, the ABLE account can pay for food and shelter without a reduction in the SSI. So that is one of the reasons of the why behind having both an ABLE account and a special needs trust. So thanks for having that. We do have just a couple of questions that I wanted to read to you. How much is usually needed to start a trust? And do you need a whole lot, a big amount up front? Or can you just start it and add to it monthly? Basically, how do people fund their trust, Melissa?
So that's actually a really good question. And it's something that, as much as I know people hate the "it depends" answer from lawyers, it really is. It all depends on exactly what you're wanting to accomplish. Now, if let's say we haven't really touched on it yet, there are what are called master pooled trusts. So if someone doesn't have an amount of money that makes sense to have their own trust, that they might hire a professional to cover that for them. If you're setting up something like that, like a master pooled trust where it's just there, you're going to be looking at kind of a setup fee, usually around $600 for something like that. And then it's up to you. I have clients who will put in, a base minimum $100, and they never fund anything else to it for a while. It's just kind of acting there as an existing bucket. If you are going through to create your own special needs trust, meaning a separate standalone one right now, where we're not looking at the testamentary one, we're looking at a standalone one. Again, I know people hate the "it depends," but if it's a scenario where maybe we're looking at doing some tax planning in conjunction with the special needs trust, maybe that person's putting a whole life insurance policy in it. So now we're creating like a life insurance trust that's also a special needs trust. So maybe they're funding it with that life insurance policy. Or maybe we just have an account that we want to set it up with. So maybe it's, $50,000 that's going in there. More often than not, to be quite frank with you, most of my clients, and again, this is a difference in attorneys and the ways that different attorneys will work with clients on things. The most common special needs standalone trust planning that I do with clients is for clients who are in that scenario where they're doing their own estate planning, but they do want to have a separate special needs trust because they are wanting to create that one bucket where grandma and auntie and uncle everybody can put in. So they don't really have to fund that trust with much up front. They just need to create an account. So you can create a bank account with $50 and then that's there as a bucket. So it just kind of depends. I don't think that people need to think, I can only create this trust if I've got, thousands upon thousands of dollars to put into it. That's really not the case. In every family situation is going to be different. And again, it's just going to be based on the other kind of extrinsic planning mechanisms that are kind of coming into play on that.
We see over the last several years, we see a lot more people that have trusts that are basically not funded or, just very little amounts in there, with the idea that they're going to pay for their kids' needs just as they always have, use the ABLE account for food and shelter should they need to. but also have access to their assets, because if they might need to use their assets during 25 to 35 years of retirement. So locking assets up and, something that may be difficult to get them out of for your own use is something that people are kind of aware of when they're looking at this. And this is where we do see of excess assets, post-retirement at death that fund the trust. And then we also definitely see definitive life insurance, permanent life insurance, and second to die policies that fund these trusts as well. So I think that, that's a strong message. You don't have to think that you have to have millions of dollars to set up a trust. And over time, that trust, it does end up coming from a variety of people in your loved one's life that may have left something here or there, a house sold, there was a life insurance policy, and grandma, grandpa had assets. So the whole takes a village kind of goes into play here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, absolutely. So just, another slide here that just kind of explains the different things that you can cover from special needs trust. So again, that kind of last few things on there, those are those like everyday luxuries that I've kind of used that term here, but any medical expenses that are not covered by Medicaid in and of itself, social activities, hobbies, do they, play soccer? Do they do dance classes? Do they just like to go to the movies every now and then? Are they into crafting? All of those little things can all be paid for through the trust. Of course, legal services, cell phones, television, furniture for wherever they're living, clothing, travel. Travel is one of those things that you have to be careful of when it is a first party trust, more so than a third party trust. And travel, the reason I say that is just it's a matter of if it is a first party trust, meaning it's the beneficiary's money in that trust. Medicaid and Social Security are very particular about that trust providing for anyone other than the beneficiary. So you may be able to, let's say we're going on a family trip to Six Flags or to Disney or whatnot. You may be able to pay for the beneficiary's trip and maybe mom or dad's trip, but you can't buy the entire family's tickets to Disney World using the special needs trust. Third party trust, not as much of an issue. They don't kind of monitor that way. But if it is a first party trust, there's something called the sole benefit rule, which is very stringently followed. So that's where you just want to be careful on travel. But these are also things that as we get into talking about, okay, who's the right trustee, your trustee is going to come into play on this a lot. I know that you look like you had a question there. I'm going to make one more point, which you'll just kind of notice very big at the bottom. Letters of intent or instructions for your trustee are so important with special needs trust because we can't include a whole lot of fluff, as I would call it. I know that sounds harsh, but we can't include stuff within the legal document saying, hey, trustee, pay for X, Y, and Z. And then 10 years go by and X, Y, or Z is suddenly something that the Medicaid office is not okay with. So that's where we want to have, or X, Y, and Z change. So we want to have those letters of instruction that are going to give you as a parent the ability to alter and kind of evolve with time and tell the trustee, okay, you've got the basics and the legal stuff within the document, but here's what my child actually really loves. These are the things that they're into. So I will get off of my soapbox for a minute now, Allison.
No, it's good. we have a lot of questions, so I was just going to run through some of them. My daughter is on SSI and 32 years old. She'll start an intern job. How much earned income per month will jeopardize her medical insurance with Medicaid? So when you start looking that up, so you ask about Medicaid, not necessarily lowering her SSI, because obviously for every $2 earned, the SSI will basically be reduced by $1 for the exception of the first $85 that they don't count. But for reducing Medicaid, they can make a higher amount. I think it's up to $16.27 for 2022 right now, $16.27 a month. But the month that you're applying for SSI, she's already on SSI. But if we got families that are applying for SSI for the first time, if they're working and their gross earnings are more than $13.50 gross per month, they will be considered not disabled in the eyes of the Social Security Administration because they're earning the substantial gainful amount for 2022 is $1,350. That only applies like basically when you're applying, not when you are already on it. So for that question, we have entire webinars on SSI and Medicaid and working while getting SSI and SSDI. So do check those out on our YouTube channel. We'll have additional ones coming up. We've even partnered with Andy Hardwick from the Social Security Administration, and we are nationally certified as Social Security advisors. So if you've got questions on this, you can reach out directly and we can get in the weeds with you, because just like Melissa saying it depends, or, well, there's a lot of different scenarios. There are a million different scenarios to Sunday when it comes to SSI and SSDI and Medicaid and Medicare, and if they're covered under a parent's record or if they're on their own record. There's a whole lot of moving parts that are relatively confusing to most, but we can definitely help you with that. But one other thing I wanted to mention, because a lot of families have questions like you of, I don't want to lose benefits if she's going to start this internship job or this small job, right? How much can she make? We hear these all the time. If they're in the vocational rehab program, VR, through the Texas Workforce Commission, your counselor through them, you can ask for a subject matter expert to do an analysis of the benefits to make sure you have a clear understanding of how much can she make under SSI and not lose Medicaid, how much can she make under SSDI and not lose these benefits. So there are additional ways around that too if you're in that vocational rehab program. So we have another person, Melissa, that says, so to be clear, I can fund the ABLE account from the trust and then use the ABLE account to pay for food and shelter. And
Yes.
that is clear. That was a great way to put it.
Yeah. So it sounds terrible, but if you were like a Breaking Bad or any of those types, it's like legal money laundering is the way one attorney that I know has once, but you're not going to get in trouble for it.
It's right. And so, yes. And furthermore, if you've got kids that are applying for the first time at age 18 for SSI and they've got more than $2,000 in their names, you can move that money into the ABLE account. It's completely legitimate move from that account to an ABLE account, and then it won't be counted against them. So there are other avenues, the right avenues. Just hiding the money doesn't work, but you can move it to the right buckets, a special needs trust or an ABLE account. Okay, so we have another person that says, I have a life and critical illness policy where my special needs son is one of the beneficiaries. This also applies to my 401k. My son is 7 years old. If I understand correctly, I should immediately change this to transfer his share to a special needs trust that I should get done. Please correct me if I am wrong. I would say, no, you are correct. And we also, but what we didn't say is that we're not fans of leaving beneficiaries, even your neurotypical children, minor children, as beneficiaries, because basically, so what happens is if you die and they're a minor, that money basically sits in trust until they turn 18, and then when they turn 18, they give them all the money. So it's usually a pretty bad idea. So there are more effective ways to do that. So to answer your question is, if you do have things set up that way, Melissa Donovan or another attorney can help you get that straightened out. But and a message to everybody else: check all of your beneficiaries. Life insurance through work, life insurance outside of work, all of your investment accounts, 401ks, 403bs, pension from previous employers that you haven't thought about in years. Look at those. Just put that on your radar over the next couple of weeks to check your beneficiaries. Your beneficiaries can, of course, it costs money to set up a special needs trust, but a beneficiary change form can be requested by each one of the carriers or companies that have the assets. They don't charge you for the change of beneficiary form. You can change the beneficiary form yourself. You can have them email that form. So it is an easy fix temporarily. So if you're trying not to cause problems in the meantime while you're getting a special needs trust set up, you could change the beneficiary to someone else, like your sister or another adult that, just in the interim, if something happens to me, like in the next 30 days, that it's not set up, wrong to go to that child. So that could be a temporary fix while you get this stuff set up. So then we hear I would like to believe that he'll make more than $840 USD per month. Is it possible, and we hear this a lot, for employers to make the salary or other payments to the ABLE account? Not really. It's still income. So basically that income is still going to have to be reported. So even if the income is reported, it's direct deposited to their checking account and then moved to the ABLE account, that's fine. That can happen, but it's still income in the eyes of the Social Security Administration.
Yeah.
Okay, one house and one car. This is a good one. Also, my son, who has a special needs trust, can have one house and one car without affecting his benefits right. And that is correct. One house and one car. If he inherits a house, can the house be sold to buy another house, and any overages can go into the trust? So that's kind of getting in a one-off a one-off scenario, but one house and one car. So if he already has a house and he inherits a house, he can't just sell the house. That's the second house. That would cause a disqualification. But we could certainly take that one offline because I know we're getting to a time point. Here's another one. If we create our own account for special needs trust, does it have to be a certain type of account? Does it have to be set up by an attorney? We can start it with not much and then put money in. So I'm not a fan, and Melissa, I'm sure you're probably not either, but when it comes to special needs, our situation as parents, it is specialized. And so I'm not a fan of do-it-yourself legal work when it comes to these special needs trusts. I saw at the UT Special Needs Planning Conference and heard about mistakes and the law changes and things like that. And I would say this is not for the faint of heart. And I would even say when it comes to legal professional help, you want to work with a specialist who predominantly works with special needs, not just one that is a generalist attorney. How would you comment on that, Melissa?
So I think this is one of those situations where I do try to be very sensitive because everybody's situation is very different. But yes, as a general rule, I'm going to 100%. And I know coming from me as the special needs attorney is going to sound biased, but it is always important when doing this kind of planning that it's not pulling a form off of line. And I think the other part of that question that needs to be really understood in the answer too is that the trust is not just the account. You need the trust is the combination of the money that's held within the trust and the contract that you are signing about how that money is to be managed. So you can set up your own account. The attorney doesn't need to set the account up for you, but the attorney needs to be there to guide you in setting up that contract, the trust document. Now, there's different scenarios, like I was saying, where, to give you an example, I have a client, he's an older gentleman with an older special needs child. His son is about in his 50s. And he has a very small estate. So it's nothing that would really justify him creating his own trust that he's going to have to hire a professional to manage or anything like that. So I've directed him, we've done some simple will planning for him, and his will directs the money for his son into, I mentioned this earlier, a pool trust with ARC of Texas. So even if it's a scenario where you're thinking to yourself, I need something to put my retirement accounts in, but you're thinking maybe right now I maybe can't afford to hire an attorney, or I'm afraid to do that. Reach out to some place like ARC of Texas, and they can guide you through as well what might be an appropriate joinder agreement to sign with them so that you can, maybe spend the $600 to create that sub account there. If money right now and hiring an attorney is something that's a little bit out of the budget. Like I said, I like to be very sensitive that there's all different scenarios. So there's always that option as well.
And I'm going to have you keep going. Can you repeat the answer to the ABLE account question? Let me see if I can see that. This is the one. That you cannot pay, an employer cannot pay a salary directly to an ABLE account is what we were saying on that particular question. I'm gonna let you move through because I know we've got more questions, but I'll let you move through. But one special needs trust related question is, if my adult aged child is employed and does not currently receive SSI, is there a benefit of using a special needs trust? And in that example, if they're not getting any SSI, but there's maybe possibly what we want to do is maintain their Medicaid eligibility. All of the waivers in the state of Texas require a Medicaid eligibility. So we're talking about HCS, Texas Home Living, Community First Choice, Class. These are all Medicaid waivers. So we still want to maintain the Medicaid waivers, and that may be a reason why they would still need to consider a special needs trust. Is that right?
Absolutely. And I had also, the other thing to think about, like you were saying earlier with Social Security, someone might be on SSDI, but their SSDI income is low enough that they're still qualifying for Medicaid or various things. There's all different scenarios. The main thing I would say is that if there's any benefit concern, whether it's Medicaid or Social Security or housing, anything like that, you're going to need to consider the special needs trust. And I will say in Texas, we have a really good program with our Medicaid office here in that it does follow along with Social Security regulations. So you can actually be quite broad in a third-party trust for someone and still kind of have that qualify in as a special needs trust. It's something, you would want to delve into in a little bit more detail in talking to an attorney about it. But there's many scenarios where we have clients who say, my child's working, they're doing okay right now, but there's still that issue and that thought in the back of my mind that might not last forever. And then we can do, different types of trust that are going to make sense in that they can be really flexible if they're not on benefits, but if they are on benefits, the trustee can hone in the reins and how they're making distributions so that it still qualifies to keep those benefits down the line. Which does kind of lend itself to this big question, which is always a long conversation with clients about who manages all of this. Kind of like Allison was saying in regards to you need to work with an attorney when doing this kind of planning. We can do the best trust document for a client possible. If the trust is not being managed properly, it doesn't matter. So choosing the trustee, the person who's actually going to carry out your wishes in this, is one of the most important decisions that you can make. And as an estate planning attorney in general, I tell clients this all the time. I am not that attorney that will say everybody needs a corporate trustee. They don't. Most people can get away without it in naming a family member or a sibling or whatnot to manage things. Special needs trust, where it's possible, is very important, and one of the places that I do strongly urge clients to work with professionals. That's not always necessary because, again, of course, it depends on the situation. But if it's a living trust, meaning if it's a trust that you're creating now and maybe you're not going to be planning on funding it too much for too long, you can continue to be the trustee of that trust. If we're not looking at doing a standalone trust for any kind of asset protection purposes for you as the actual grantor of the trust, many times my clients will choose to continue as trustee of that trust for a while. I typically don't recommend siblings. Even in non-special needs scenarios, I don't recommend that you have one sibling managing another sibling's money, because I don't know if any of you out there are siblings yourself. I'm the youngest of 3 girls and we love each other dearly, but I'm pretty sure my sister would not love it if she had to come to me to ask me if she could have a distribution from her trust, no matter how much we love each other. So a lot of it kind of plays into family harmony as well. But the main crux of it is because distributions from a special needs trust are the most important thing. If you have a family member who maybe doesn't have a whole lot of understanding and background about how Medicaid works, and that if we give, this amount of cash to Johnny, well, that's going to cause an issue for Medicaid, that person can inadvertently cause a major issue in benefits, that if you are able to have a professional managing it, it would be much better off, because then that individual, that trust company, that professional trustee, that's what they do. They know the rules, they keep up with the rules. Like Allison was saying, she mentioned a continuing education course that she and I actually both do every year. This is what we do. We spend our whole life doing this. Now, I don't act as a trustee for clients. That's not what I do. But trust companies, professional trustees who keep up with the regulations, who are constantly in contact with Medicaid and Social Security, they are going to know the ins and outs of, I can do this, I can't do that. And that's what we want to make sure is in place.
And I would say, depending on the level of the money in the trust, we have some families that have, that their trust is going to be funded with millions of dollars, then we would recommend a corporate trustee in those examples. If they're a much smaller amount, then that, may be, worth considering if you've got somebody that's very financially savvy, in a background. But it's not a small job. Running a trust, it is a big job. So the person really definitely needs to be up to the challenge. We've had a lot of questions, and we kind of talked about, we kind of dabbled in the ABLE account. We definitely have ABLE account presentations on our YouTube channel, but the bottom line is an ABLE account, you can put $16,000 a year into an ABLE account, and the disability did have to start prior to age 26. If it can be construed as achieving a better life for an individual with a disability, then you can basically pay for it out of the ABLE account. But like Melissa was saying, you got to be careful. You can't just pay for the whole, family's vacation or what have you. But I know from a time perspective that we're basically out of time. I copied and put Melissa's information back in the chat box, so it was close. I'm going to go ahead and copy and put my information back in the chat box, so it is updated. And back.
Share the YouTube channel is another question.
Okay. Yeah. Yes. I'm going to put that. I will put that in there. And then from a slide perspective, I know that we're out of time, and I know that we haven't got through all the slides, but we are going to share the slides with you guys today, so you guys can have a copy of the slides and you'll have a copy of the recording. Do you want to hit the high points on any other remaining topics, and put your contact information up on the screen, Melissa?
Sure. So I think the main things we didn't get to, which is really kind of the questions where people go, well, why can't I do this instead of that? And the main thing that I always like people to walk away from, and it's a little bit of an old school thought process. I can't give money to my special needs child. I have to disinherit them. You don't, clearly. And then it's do I give the money to their sibling to provide for them? There's a host of reasons not to do that. We list some of them here. What if that person goes through a divorce and the spouse walks away with it? What if there's a bankruptcy? What if they pass away and their will gives everything to their husband or wife? So just things that you want to keep in mind. The other thing that I will say in terms of kind of deciding basics, I'm a big believer that in this scenario and in some scenarios, equal does not always mean fair. So as a parent, I think sometimes we always want to treat everyone the same. And when you have maybe 3 or 4 children and you have one that has special needs, that it may not be equal, and that's okay. It's a conversation for you to have, because you need to understand and you need to decide, what is that child going to need that maybe my other children are going to be able to provide for themselves? So those are kind of some of the things that I tend to hear that parents struggle with most often when we're going through these conversations, not only from a legal perspective, but a little bit from an emotional perspective as well. Things to know that it's okay that you may be in a situation where you're not able to treat your children exactly equally.
And Melissa, I think, for me, the key on all of this, and I say we get in the weeds on these topics deep and wide when it comes to special needs all the time in our webinars with you, Veronica. But the key thing that you need to know is there is help out there for you. There is information out there for you to kind of get moving, get this moving in the right direction. You're here today and you learned something new. If you took one nugget away from this webinar today, then we're happy. It was worth your time. Maybe it was a beneficiary, maybe it was the amount of money, that it takes as far as qualifying for SSI, or that you should just apply again when your child turns 18. But whatever it is, we hope you took something away. And Melissa and I, will definitely partner again. We've done a lot of webinars in the past. They do live on our YouTube channel. Everybody that's out here today is going to get an email with the slides and the recording of today's meeting. So you don't have to put anything in the chat box where you're automatically going to get that. So thanks so much, everyone, for attending. Sorry, we're a little bit over. Veronica, thank you for having us again. It's certainly been our pleasure.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Take care.